Hi all, my name is Georgina Kreutzer. Welcome to my mixed media tutorial for highlights and shadows on Strathmore's Toned Paper. Today I'll show you a pretty quick still life sketch that uses various media to create a pretty convincing looking seashell. I'm starting out by blocking out the basic shapes, which you can pause and take your time to do. And our reference image is found on the instruction sheet you can download on the Strathmore website. So as you see here, I'm just noting where my highlights and shadows are going to be placed on a basic block outline of the seashell. And I've chosen the top right corner to place the key highlight, and that's something we'll be focusing on throughout the entirety of the tutorial. I'm just quickly sketching out the ribbing over the seashell. It doesn't really matter if this is completely accurate at this point. You don't even need to be doing a fan shell if you don't want. But I find them just such a simple shape. Those lines that we've just created are the center point for our ribbing. So as you can see, I'm just adding some scalloped edge to our shell. And the first thing I always do when laying out a still life like this is put in the highlights first. And I'm using a Carbothello pastel pencil. You can use any white pencil that you like. You don't even need to use white. But just a lighter tone than the toned tan that we're using is ideal. Now, as you can see, I'm concentrating the light on the top right corner. And so obviously, on the opposite side of those ribs, we've got shade. And so I'm just lightly layering shade for the first time. Now I've picked, this is a Derwent Artist's Black Pencil, and I'm just layering the shade again over those ribs. And even though we have light coming from the top right corner, we'll still have shade on those ribs on the right hand side, because the shell does curve around. I think a key that I'll probably mention in the future tutorials is light layers are my key of slowly building up a convincing final image. And it also allows you for correction of mistakes. I don't quite like to go into the darkest media first. Just something to keep in mind. So as you can see, I'm just alternating between the highlights and shadows, and I'm just going over them and over them. I am looking at a reference image. I'll look at the reference image until we've got the bulk of the drawing down, and then usually I'm just kind of eyeballing it and making sure it looks convincing. Because I never really copy a reference image 100%. It can get a bit boring. And I like to be able to put my own spin on things sometimes. This is actually the first black and white drawing I've done for a really long time. Usually I'd be adding some blue or red, but... So yeah, key for quite part of this tutorial is just to watch how I'm layering and layering, just alternating between shadow and light. Already the image is starting to pop off a page a little bit, and we've only used two colors at this point. And so here I've picked up a Mikador silver pencil. Usually I wouldn't use a metallic because they don't photograph so well, but I just had this on hand. And I'm using this to blend in the shadows and the highlights and to give it a bit of extra dimension. As you can see, it's starting to blend the images, the several parts of the image together a bit better. I'm just looking a little bit more real. And something I think you should take note of is I never really darkly outline any of my images. I sometimes don't even really outline the shell when I start. I just did that in this case to show you, just because it makes it a bit easier to explain what's going on. but sometimes you just start laying colour down on the page and form the shape around that. And notice that I'm always putting the line work in the same direction. So in this case, the top right to the bottom left, to create a texture as well. It's a bit of a double whammy in my application of the pencil. And then the opposite line direction down the other side of the ribbon to create, what looks like a real curved rib in both highlights, shallows, and the texture. I decided the best way to create these tutorials would be to just film myself creating the artwork as I would, and then just explain my thinking process afterwards. Because I feel that it's a tricky thing to teach something when you've become so accustomed to drawing it. So remember to pop any questions you have down the bottom. If I'm missing anything, if there's anything particular you'd like to know, I'd be more than happy to help you. So just still layering and layering. And it's such a therapeutic process. Another method to this, to create an interesting effect, is to just choose two colours, contrastive colours, one light and one dark, and substitute those instead of the black and white. You can create some quite beautiful effects. So you see, I'm starting for the first time to really lightly shade in the shadow on the exterior of the shell. And when this is complete, this is one of the little details that makes the final artwork look truly real and pop off the page. And you have to be really patient with this. This would have taken a few minutes when slowed down to real time. And I've just taken a bit of an abrasive sponge to blend that in. I'm using my finger, which I probably shouldn't, but there we go. I'm just tidying it up a little bit. I find that a really soft tissue works particularly well if you don't have any tools to be shading. And so I'm just taking a Mikador marker, and because that Derwent artist pencil is actually water soluble, it's a watercolor pencil, this marker blends in that watercolor pencil and darkens all of those lines that I created originally. Just gives them added depth, and zoomed out where you can't really see all of the pencil details as easily, you can really see that seashell starting to pop off the page. And one of my favorite parts of drawing is actually the photographing afterwards. It's also a time where you start to see all the little mistakes, and you can go back in and fix any details. So just using that Mikador Color Rush pencil again to do some further blending, both on the shadows and on the object itself. And just refining details over and over again. It's actually really quite a fun process, and this video could have been a lot shorter if I didn't want to pay so much attention to detail, but I think it's important. A lot of people ask about, how long have I been practicing and how do I achieve certain objects, drawings, the way I do. And I think a lot of it comes down to patience and really paying attention to the details. Obviously, I thought that right-hand side was a bit too light, so just touching up the line work there. And you can just slow this video down or pause at any point and continue to fill in your own drawing if that's what you're doing. Just going over those lines again. I really love these markers by Mikador. They're called stylist brush markers, and they actually have 2 points. One hard small nib and a larger brush-like end, which is what I'm using. Fantastic for creating calligraphy as well. It's like a soft brush-like end. And the colours are really vivid, but of course I'm just using it's a dark grey in this video. And just blending and layering over and over. Just light layers so that you don't create something a bit irreversible. If you notice, I haven't really used erasers much throughout the entire process, because if you're doing it slowly and carefully, you shouldn't need them. So this is a Roymac, one of Mikador's Roymac paintbrushes with a really fine tip. And I'll just zoom in and show you what I'll do at this stage. I'm using a white acrylic paint, and I'm just dotting some texture along the points on the shell that have the deepest highlights, the lightest parts. What I love about doing this, especially I think it's important to do at the end of most of your pencil layering, because it's hard to lay a pencil back over acrylic. This particularly makes the image pop. And I like also that if you have an acrylic and you want to mix a texture impasto with it, you actually get a physical texture that dries onto the page, and that adds to the shadow and the light, and just creates an extra interesting dimension in your final drawing. And at this point, I would actually usually use this before applying the acrylic, but it doesn't really matter. This is a fantastic workable matte fixative from Mikador, and I like to use this on all my artworks that have layers just to lock them in and stop further smudging. And yeah, as you can see, it's already dried on the page. It's really quick. So while you're drawing, you can apply it, wait about 10 seconds and keep going. It dries in a really good matte as well, so there's no issue with drawing straight over the top. And sometimes it gives the surface a bit more tooth again to catch the pastel or pencil or whatever it is you're applying. So just going over those shadows again. I think at this point I was just deciding if it was actually done, and that's a part of the process that a lot of artists struggle with. Not overdoing your image is one of the big challenges. I'm sorry for my poor camera work at the moment. As you can see, zooming in and around, it's starting to really pop off the page, and especially when it's zoomed out, it looks like an object sitting there on the page, which is exactly what we wanted to go for. And here under some nice lamp light and the dusk light from my window. Thank you so much for following this tutorial. I'm really looking forward to the next weeks where we'll be covering even more exciting topics. Thanks for sticking by.